Alright, since I don't really know what to do with myself, I've decided to make a video about what is happening right now. My dad is dying, and I'm supposed to be leaving here in Florida to go to Vidalia as soon as I'm able. I have to wait for the warden to call me back to give me permission to see my dad because he's an inmate at the Georgia Department of Corrections. He had a TPM, which is a temporary parole month, of September 1st, but he suffered a stroke on August the 6th, a double stroke, and that paralyzed him, and because he was unable to go home after that, they revoked his parole, because parole is heavily contingent upon the address being verified and everything. So I initiated the paperwork. I found out on August the 23rd that my dad had the stroke. He was in the hospital in Savannah for 3 weeks on a ventilator, and nobody even knew what had happened to him. But he made it through, and they sent him to Georgia State Prison, which is a maximum security facility. It was the only one with the medical staff equipped to deal with someone that would be as dependent as my dad was. So he got there on August the 22nd, and he was never really an inmate at Georgia State Prison. He was what they call a sleeper. So because of that, he had all this trouble getting the things that he needed, like his ID, so he could get store because he was diabetic, and frequently in the morning he would be hypoglycemic and not have anything to eat, and they would give him apples, but he couldn't eat apples because they lost his dentures when he was in the hospital in Savannah. So after he went to a maximum security facility, it made it a lot harder for us to go see him. But I went every week. And it took him like a month before they started doing any physical therapy with him. But they started doing it, and even though he was paralyzed for a while, and they didn't start therapy for, they waited a while. Usually it's good to do that as soon as possible. He had been moving his fingers and moving his thumb. And the last time that I saw him, which was, I think, maybe 4 weeks, I don't know right now. It was 2 weeks before he went into the hospital with pneumonia, and I saw him, and he was moving his leg and moving all the muscles that he would have needed to be able to walk again. And so I was very hopeful that he was going to be coming here to stay in a rehab nursing home and get better, and then move in with me and spend his last years or however long he had in a happy and clean and healthy environment here with me and my husband. My dad's never had that. He's never lived in a happy, clean, healthy, loving environment his whole life. And I was hoping to give him that. I even knew I was ready for him to not like it and to hate it and to be a pain in the ass and to be mean, and just because it probably would have been uncomfortable and so unfamiliar for him to be in a place where people don't argue and fight and holler all the time. But I was ready for that. And I was so close. I worked the whole time to get him out of there. And this interstate compact, which is what has to happen if an inmate is being transferred from one state to another when they're getting paroled, it took forever. They didn't send expedited orders to Florida, so Florida just took their time dealing with it. And this whole time, my dad was doing great. He was improving and doing much better, but he was still struggling with depression, and it's hard enough to heal from a traumatic event like a stroke without being in prison, sitting there staring at 4 cinder block walls 24 hours a day with people that really don't care anything about you. Just seeing your children once a week and holding on to that all week and trying to get better, but he was doing it. Finally, Florida got all the paperwork ready to go and sent it back to Georgia, and I called my dad and I told him, or well, he called me because I couldn't call him, and I told him that it was done. And the next time he saw the chief counselor of the prison, he told the chief counselor that everything in Florida was done, and it was back to Florida or back to Georgia, and that he was going to be getting out soon. And the chief counselor told him that it would take at least another 2 weeks to process the paperwork to get him out once they got the orders. And my dad called me that night and he said, Mandy, I can't make it in here another 2 weeks. I know I can't make it another 2 weeks. And I heard the desperation in his voice, and it was so heartbreaking. And the next several days went by. The whole week went by and he didn't call me. And I knew something was wrong. That Friday night, I was having like nightmares and I wasn't able to sleep, and I was just full of anxiety, and I was so worried because I hadn't heard from him all week, and every time it occurred that he didn't call me during the week, something bad had happened. So I was just waiting that something bad had happened. And then they called me a few days later to tell me that he was in there with pneumonia. And that was 3 weeks ago. And now his kidneys are failing and his heart is failing. And it doesn't look like he has any chance of recovery. So I made the decision to put a DNR on his file about 3 days ago. Because I can tell by looking at him that there's no way he would make it through the extreme measures that they have to take to bring someone back if they code. And the doctors called me this morning and told me that he doesn't have much chance at all of survival. And so they recommend that we take him off of life support. And if he doesn't have much of a chance of survival, then that's the decision that I'm going to make, because I don't want him to be in pain. And I've seen him. I know he's in pain. His whole body is toxic right now. He's swollen, and it's really awful, a terrible sight to see. And as much as my heart is breaking because I'm losing my daddy, and that hurts a lot, I'm also so angry and so pissed off that it's come to this, because I know this wouldn't happen if he would have gotten down. And I know that it's not healthy to sit here and what if, but if he had gotten out, he would be getting better right now. He would be learning how to walk. He would be getting his strength back. But it was taking too long, and it's been August the 24th was the first day that I initiated any action, and it's November 18th. So it's been almost exactly 3 months. That's how long it takes to get something done. When somebody's suffering in prison, somebody that really, in my opinion, never should have gone there to begin with. And I know everybody that has family that's been arrested probably says that. But seriously, a nonviolent drug offense before mandatory minimum drug laws were overturned. Yes, it was a lot of drugs, and yes, they were bad drugs, but my dad wasn't a street dealer. He wasn't somebody that was a menace to society. He was just a menace to himself, and him and his friends were all doing drugs, and so he was the one that organized everyone acquiring drugs, so he's the one that got into all the trouble, and he wound up essentially getting a death sentence for nonviolent drug offenses. He had a heart attack 2 months before they sentenced him. He passed out in the courtroom. One of the first times they tried to sentence him, his health was very clearly indicative that he wouldn't survive prison. And he hasn't. It's been a year and a half. He went in May of last year. It's been a year and a half. Yeah. I wonder how that is corrective. How is that corrective to society? How is that corrective to my dad? Like, what good has come out of this? I can't see anything that's good come out of it. They didn't get any money out of it. I mean, it cost the state of Georgia a lot of money to house him. He was sick from the time he got there. Why didn't they recommend drug court or drug treatment or something like that for someone that was in his state when this whole thing started? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So, I'm gonna go and hold my hand. I'm gonna go and hold my dad's hand and comfort him as much as I can in his last minutes on this earth, and hope that he knows that no matter how hard his life was and no matter what choices he made that may have negatively impacted my life or his own life, that he is loved. I love him, my siblings love him. I'm pretty sure my step siblings love him too. His sister loves him, his mom loved him, his stepdad loves him. And I'm going to share that with him. Okay. Love is the most important thing, really, in the end. It's all that matters. It doesn't matter. All the other stuff doesn't matter.